Jimmy Fallon had Conor McGregor on his show, and I want women to pay attention to what that actually means.
Welcome back to the show, Conor.
A man who was found civilly liable for rape gets to sit on a late-night couch in front of millions of people. He gets to smile and laugh and, promote his comeback. He's treated like entertainment. And the woman who fought to hold him accountable gets to watch the world make room for a man like this again. And this is the part that is just the worst kind of injury after the injury. Because the harm is one thing. What he did is one thing, and it's horrific. But the world welcoming him back is a completely other thing. And when men like Jimmy Fallon do this, they're not staying neutral because they're actually making a statement. He's not just some late night host. He didn't stumble into this interview. He's not just being polite. He had a choice. He's helping the public kind of relax around a man that they should not be relaxed around at all. And this is what one of my favorite content creators, an Australian feminist named Mia Finley, calls dangerously indifferent men. And that phrase, it's exactly right. Because rape culture is not only built by violent men, it's built by men who keep smiling after the act happens. And we welcome men like this onto platforms, right? It's the men that we put on social media, the men whose concert tickets we still buy, the men who we all just laugh along, right? This is a perfect example of the dangerous indifference. And this is why women say all men, because only one of the men on the show committed the act. But when the other man gives it permission to just exist out in the open, what are we supposed to think of men? So the people who are making all of this content and talking about how terrible Jimmy Fallon is for doing this are absolutely correct. There's no overreaction here. Every man doesn't commit the exact same harm, but both of those men have committed harm in their own way. And we're not going to let one slide just because one guy did it worse. That's actually a perfect example of how good men benefit from bad men, right? Jimmy Fallon didn't do the act. No, the other guy did, but they're both bad because they're both on there making it okay. Too many men are just protecting a rapist's path back into reality, back into the world. I'm going to talk about why Jimmy Fallon platforming Conor McGregor is disgusting, what civil liability actually means because too many people do not understand that, why neutrality only protects the powerful, and how this media rehabilitation actually mirrors what women experience privately after abusive relationships, and why the terrible men who make the room comfortable for violent men are absolutely part of the problem. My name is Lisa Sonni, and I'm a certified relationship coach, author of 5 books, and I'm an expert in toxic and abusive relationships. On this channel, I talk about what abusive men do, I expose their tactics and the systems that make this all okay, and how women can get out of relationships like this and rebuild. Now, Jimmy Fallon is not a bystander in this. He's not some guy watching from his couch and he didn't do anything wrong. He is the couch, he is the platform, he's the host, he's the show, the audience, the network, all of this, cultural legitimacy. This is not just about Conor McGregor, who is a complete POS. This is about Jimmy Fallon choosing to help normalize him. This is a choice that this man made in the face of knowing what this man did, what he has been accused of, what he has been held liable for. So when Fallon brings on McGregor and he treats it like a comeback, it's not an interview. He is actively participating in the reputation repair of a rapist. He is helping the audience move from he was held civilly liable for rape to, look, he feels bad, he's confident, he's fighting again, he's back. Like, that's not an accident. We get that, right? Because this is what platforming does. It gives the public permission to move on. But what about the victim? Now, the fact that this happened civilly is such an interesting thing because what I constantly hear is, yeah, but it was only civilly liable, right? So like he didn't do it. I wish that more people could understand what civilly liable actually means and the difference between criminal court and civil court. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to go into some massive deep dive, but let's deal with this. Let's talk about this. If we say that he wasn't criminally convicted, that is accurate. Okay, he wasn't. But it doesn't mean that he was cleared. It doesn't mean that civil findings mean nothing. That is insane. You are an insane person if you think that a civil liable verdict has no meaning. If you think it means that she lied or that she just wanted money, you are a stupid human being. You need to open books and read them and receive new information. I wish I could say that more respectfully As a professional, it feels maybe rude. People might be shocked at the way that I'm speaking, but the truth is, if you think that, and it's 2026 with all the access in the world to help you understand this better, you're making an active choice to not understand it better. And if I seem angry, you are absolutely correct, because everyone should be angry. If you're not angry, that's a questionable problem. All this means is that a criminal system didn't convict him, but a civil jury found him responsible. They found that he did it. That's what that means. He did it. That's why he was held civilly liable, because he did it. There has to be evidence. There has to be proof that he did it. And that's what happened. He did it. Am I being clear? The act happened. He raped a woman. But so many abusive men, and let's not forget, not all men, and abusive men love to live in this little space that they see as ambiguous. This is why so much sexual violence goes unreported, right? Because it's not proven well enough for the criminal system, but it's not disbelieved enough to disappear, right? So it's serious enough to destroy her life, though, but not serious enough for everyone to stop cheering for him and putting him on goddamn late night TV shows. That gap is the exact place where powerful, violent men rebuild themselves. Now, the couch that this guy sat on is reputation repair. His image was dirty, so another man with a cleaner image stands beside him and laughs and reminisces about the past and asks some really normal questions. And we're just talking like he didn't rape someone, right? We want the audience to feel comfortable again because we see him as not a bad guy. Maybe he's a little funny. He's sitting beside someone that you already like. And suddenly there's no violence, right? Or it's less visible. But he's not innocent, but he's also not taking accountability. Jimmy Fallon's brand is harmlessness, right? And this matters because harmless men can do harm when they make a dangerous man look safe. Like Jimmy Fallon's just McGregor's wingman, as far as I'm concerned, right? You're just sitting there, hey, let's all make him look like a nice guy. But he doesn't have to defend him directly. He doesn't have to say, I know that he did it and I'm okay with it. He just has to sit across from him and treat him like a normal guy. And then the image does the rest. When Jimmy Fallon brings McGregor onto that couch, the message isn't just, here's a fighter promoting a comeback. It's actually, he matters more than what happened to that woman, than what he did to that woman. His career matters more than her credibility, than her feelings. That is crazy. Absolutely crazy. All survivors of sexual assault, of domestic violence, of abuse know exactly what it feels like when the whole friggin' world does not name the harm directly. When these men who are rich and powerful, which they aren't all, but the men who are, get platformed. People always talk about, false allegations ruin men's lives. Convictions don't ruin men's lives. Look at the number of people. I could make an entire video naming only the men who have gone on to have wildly successful careers after they have been proven guilty of something. And we know that it happened, whether they're held civilly liable, criminally liable, or neither, which is the most common. Many times because women don't bother to pursue it, because look what happens when they pursue it. Nothing. The harm that McGregor committed against this woman isn't enough to change how he's treated. Everybody's still going to act like it's not a big deal, right? It was the past. He's sorry. Like what? Neutrality only protects the powerful, right? People love to say, listen, we don't know. There's two sides and all this crap. It was only civilly liable, even though you have the ability to learn what that means. And it's a choice not to. And sometimes we don't know, okay? Sometimes we don't. This time we do. Because we don't get to say, I didn't know, after there's evidence and testimony and findings and civil rulings, after appeals, after documented harm. It's crazy. So when the whole issue has gone through a public process, we have to realize that neutrality is just playing dress up. You really are. You can't be neutral in something like this. If you support him, it's because you support rape. That's it. There's no middle ground. This man's life gets to keep moving. He kept his wife. He's keeping his career. His money keeps moving. His fans keep cheering. That is trash. And who is carrying the cost of this? His victim. And victims and survivors everywhere are feeling something that they felt when they themselves experienced this in their own way. So dangerous indifference, which as I said, is coined by Mia Finley, who's an Australian feminist. She's phenomenal. It is active participation, right? It doesn't mean that a man's going to say, yeah, I totally support a rapist. They're going to deny that he's a rapist. Most men are not that honest, right? They might think it in their mind of like, well, he probably didn't rape her, or, she probably just changed her mind. They have all these beliefs. They're misogynists, but they believe it. You'll see it in the comments. I guarantee it. Dangerous indifference can look like, I don't want to get involved. I don't know. I don't want to judge. I don't want to assume. I want to separate the art from the artist, right? I'm just here for the music. I'm just here for the sport. I don't get involved in what he does personally. That doesn't matter to me. How on God's green earth can that not matter? That is crazy, right? All of this garbage about like, I don't ask questions, or all people deserve second chances, right? We don't want to ruin a man's life, or I'm sure it's complicated. I'm just doing an interview. I'm just a fan. I'm just neutral. I could go on. All of these things are statements said by dangerously indifferent men. Sometimes being neutral means that you are willing to step over a woman's body to get to the entertainment. Entertainment matters more, right? So someone was raped. As long as he's entertaining, that's okay. That's what you're saying. That's crazy to me. What message does this send to survivors? Can you imagine being the woman who went through that process? Can you imagine being a father who has a child who went through that process and now we're just all platforming this man? Imagine surviving an assault and going through what she went through in the public eye, the legal process, the humiliation, the appeal, the pressure, trying to hold a powerful man accountable, and then having to sit there and watch him smile across from Jimmy Fallon on a late night show, welcomed and promoted and treating it like an interesting comeback story. How can your pain be legally acknowledged and then just socially completely ignored? What a feeling that must be. You can fight for a finding and then you can watch the whole world make your rapist comfortable. This is why it's injury after injury. It tells survivors that accountability, if it ever happens, and it usually doesn't, has a very short shelf life when it's profitable. What I find so interesting, and I've made content on the perfect victim. We expect victims to be perfect. There has to be a perfect way that they survived the assault, that they talk about the assault, that they process the assault, all of it. There has to be a perfect way that they've handled it through trauma, through a fight or flight response. She has to have done everything perfectly. She has to respond how you think you would have responded, even though you're using logical brain cells in order to decide how you would have responded. And someone who's in the middle of a trauma response does not have all those faculties. But that's what we do to survivors. But the rapist, the assailant, the perpetrator, the abuser, how come they don't have to be perfect, right? He just has to be profitable, right? She has to have the perfect tone, the perfect evidence, the perfect sadness, anger, restraint, the perfect legal case. He has to be exciting enough, or famous enough, or useful enough, or a nice guy enough, and everybody's ready to move on. That's the standard that women are up against. She has to prove her pain perfectly, and he has to be marketable. That's it. He has to sell tickets and pull ratings, right? I don't even want to go down a Chris Brown tangent, but there's another perfect example. People are like, I just like his music. Do you like the fact that he beats the crap out of tons of women? You can put that aside. Interesting. Cool. What kind of person are you? But the truth is, this is how abuse continues culturally. You think this is just the act itself, right? The assault, the rape, the beating, whatever, the threat. There is a culture around it. And when we act like the culture doesn't matter, when people are like, it's just a DV joke, who cares? It protects the culture. It creates the culture where we all just laugh when it happens in real life. And look at all the people who sat there and watched this guy's comeback with a smile on their face, laughing along with these jokes that they made. You're signing for him. It's Jimmy Fallon co-signed for McGregor. That is so disgusting. And then people are going to frame this guy, he's controversial. He's controversial because he's a rapist. Why is that controversial? He should just be canceled, and that's it. Comeback. There should be no comeback. Everyone deserves second chances? Really? Ask the victims if they think that their rapists and perpetrators of abuse deserve second chances. All we're doing is teaching men that even if a woman fights back, even if she says no, even if the court recognizes it, he can still just go into the room. What are the consequences? None. She did it for attention. She did it for money, and she's going to be dragged through the mud. What are his consequences? What are the consequences of a false allegation when a real, proven claim has no consequences? Now, I know men get all pissy and whiny and emotional when women say all men. They lose their minds, right? I didn't do it. I'm one of the good ones. You're absolutely not. I bet you Jimmy Fallon thinks he's a good one. But if you want to be a good one, you'd stop protecting the bad ones. You wouldn't buy tickets to his show. You wouldn't buy tickets to his fight. You wouldn't buy tickets to the shows and movies of all of the perpetrators that are still actively famous. You wouldn't invite them back. You wouldn't tell women to be fair while perpetrators of abuse are being welcomed with open arms. Men like this are not the ones online calling women man-haters for noticing patterns in men. You would just be noticing it with us. There are way too many men protecting the path back for men like this, men who do harm and excuse harm. Every man I know is like, oh, I don't know any guys like this. You sure do. You absolutely do. These men are in our group chats, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, on our TVs. They're in our friend groups. We all think we don't know someone like this, but statistically speaking, you do. You just don't see him because he doesn't show you what he would show his female partner behind closed doors or what he shows women when no one is watching. This whole media rehabilitation crap is so often exactly what you see in toxic and abusive family dynamics. Women see this pattern all the time, right? He hurts and his family still invites him, or her family still invites him. Friends still defend him. Coworkers still love him. The church will still use him. The kids will still think he's a good dad, and she is always expected to be civil and quiet and forgiving and not bitter and not dramatic. You know, who hurt you? All this garbage that we feed women. But he keeps access to his image, his relationships, and his life, which means there are no consequences, which means it will never stop. What we know, what has been proven by science, is that accountability must happen. And more specifically, third-party accountability from civil court, criminal court, family court, law enforcement. That's what matters. People are so attached to this version that costs them nothing, right? His mother still invites him to dinner. His friends call him a good guy. The courts look at these abusers like, oh, he's a reasonable parent. You know, they're reading co-parenting communication, not able to see through it. They're attached to the version of him that costs them nothing. That is why survivors feel so alone. People are trying to recover from what he did and then also having to survive everybody else's loyalty to who this guy pretends to be. Second chances are not owed on national TV. Don't people deserve second chances? Not always. Second chances can't be more protected than the victim's friggin' reality. Second chances require accountability, not a comeback tour. It needs specifics, it needs repair, it needs changed behavior, and it needs consequences. And sometimes consequences just need to be what they are forever. What was his consequence? Being held civilly liable? So what? Money? So what? What is the actual consequence that will make sure that he doesn't do it again? No woman in her right mind would be celebrating this man's comeback, and the same can be said for men. You're not in your right mind if you're okay with this. Now, the thing that people always want to argue with too is like, you can't say that, right? He wasn't criminally convicted. Civil court is different. Okay, fine. So he wasn't convicted. Good for you. He was found civilly liable for rape, and then he appealed it and it was rejected. Do you know why it was rejected? Because it happened. That's the answer, because it happened. If you're using the absence of a criminal conviction to mean that he's innocent, you're not based in reality. Most sexual reports are never reported. Most are never charged and convicted. And men who benefit from disbelief know that. They know that. Jimmy Fallon should absolutely be called out. So should the network and anyone else who does this. But he personally helped normalize him. He offered him the couch. He participated in his comeback. He absolutely should be held accountable for the active choice that he made to platform a rapist. His little ridiculous, cheerful interview can become part of a larger system that just tells women, your harm barely matters. It only matters a little bit. But if it gets in the way of a man's career, it doesn't matter anymore. Dangerous indifference is not passive. It has consequences. It makes the unacceptable be acceptable again. This culture protects violent men, not just by denying what they did, although many people deny what he did for these ridiculous reasons, but it actually changes the subject, right? It makes it complicated. It makes it, it's not that bad. And you let him be funny again and charming again and marketable and exciting. That's horrible. Men like Jimmy Fallon don't have to say, I don't care about victims. They show it by what they're willing to overlook, who they're willing to sit beside, who they're willing to help rehabilitate. Jimmy Fallon having Conor McGregor on his show is not a small thing. It's not just an interview. It's not just a comeback. It's not just a conversation. It is a man with a massive platform helping normalize another man who is held civilly liable for rape. And this sends a message to women, to survivors, to men, to abusers. You can still come back. You can still be part of the club. You can still fight and have a career, and nothing bad will happen. And this is why women are so angry. And so if you think that I sounded angry, you are absolutely correct, and you should be angry too. Someone has opened the door for him to be normal again and to come back into the world. He was invited onto this show, and we can all see it. The danger is not only the man who commits the harm, it's the men who make the world comfortable for a man like Conor McGregor. So if you're a woman who's been through this, if you're a woman who's upset by this, you can work with me one-on-one. You can join any of my group coaching programs or join me inside my online community for women survivors of abuse called She Rises Collective. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.